Now, from WYDC TV, this is Big Fox News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Anna Manuel. The latest jobs numbers are out. They're good, and it shows a very different story than what most Americans are feeling in their wallets. Lauren Blanchard has more from Washington.
Strong hiring news. The latest jobs report showed the U.S. added 428,000 jobs in April.
If you're looking for a job right now, folks, get one right now, because I don't think there's ever going to be a time again anytime soon where we're going to have this strong labor demand.
For 12 consecutive months, the U.S. has added more than 400,000 jobs a month, the biggest gains in April in leisure and hospitality as more people are taking trips. The unemployment rate remained unchanged from March at 3.6%.
What parts of the country can we do better at? What parts of the country can we get more people engaged in the workforce?
Despite hourly wage increases, the participation rate slightly dipped from March to April, now at 62.2%.
They are raising wages. They know that they have to do that in order to get the talent. Employers are really struggling right now.
While the economy is adding jobs, the inflation rate is adding up for consumers at the register. In an attempt to bring down inflation earlier this week, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point and will likely continue to hike them. There are fears that could lead to a recession.
If you want to prevent a recession, you need to prevent inflation.
Inflation was at 8.5% in March. The next consumer price index or inflation report will be out on Wednesday next week. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
The clock is ticking if you want to surprise mom on Mother's Day. According to the National Retail Federation, nearly 84% of adults are expected to spend on mom. About 75% of people will get a greeting card, more than 70% will get flowers, and roughly more than half will take mom on a special outing. The National Retail Federation predicts in total, Americans will spend more than $31 billion on Mother's Day. That's up more than $3 billion compared to last year. The parent company of TurboTax makes a government settlement over claims it deceived customers for its services. Intuit will pay $141 million settlement over allegedly luring low-income users to use Free Edition, which actually charged for some filing, instead of harder-to-find TurboTax Free File, which was part of an IRS Free File program. Intuit will owe some consumers $30 a year on 2016 to 2018 filings. Intuit agreed to be more clear in its eligibility disclosures going forward. The feds are restricting the use of a COVID vaccine amid reports of a rare blood clotting syndrome. Jonathan Seri has more from Atlanta.
Americans could soon have one less option to choose from as the COVID vaccination effort continues. The FDA steering folks away from Johnson & Johnson's vaccine, saying the shot should only be given to those over 18 who can't or won't get a vaccine from another manufacturer. The new guidance prompted by concerns about a rare but potentially fatal blood clotting syndrome found in some people who got the Johnson & Johnson shot. The number of cases is still low, but it's growing, and it follows a December recommendation from the CDC prioritizing shots from Pfizer or Moderna. But health officials are also reassuring those who have already gotten the Johnson & Johnson vaccine they're likely not in any danger.
All of those rare events happen in the first couple of weeks after you've gotten vaccinated. So if you're more than a couple of weeks out, you're in the clear.
The announcement comes as officials scramble to avoid another surge. The daily average of new cases has more than doubled in the past month. It's now at 69,000, the highest number since February. Cities and states have been reluctant to reinstate COVID restrictions, but the spike is prompting some schools to bring back mask mandates, hoping to stop any new outbreaks before they happen.
For me, implementing the masks again it is what it is. Anything to keep the children and the staff and the teachers safe.
And the TSA says COVID infections have jumped more than 50% among its staff since the nationwide mask mandate for public transportation was lifted. In Atlanta, Jonathan Seri, Fox News.
Ukrainian troops and some civilians still taking shelter inside a steel plant. Now, officials racing to evacuate those trapped inside as Russian troops bombard the factory. Trey Yingst has more.
Heavy fighting is raging in the tunnels beneath a Mariupol steel plant today. Outnumbered Ukrainian troops are holding out against Russian forces as they storm the area on foot and with tanks. For weeks, civilians and thousands of Ukrainian fighters have been holed up underneath the plant. Today, a third rescue operation is underway. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his team will do all it can to ensure the safety of those still inside.
Currently, Russian shelling and the assault on Azovstal do not stop, but civilians still need to be taken out. Women, children, many children remain there. Just imagine this hell.
Ukrainian officials say Russians were able to get inside with the help of an electrician who showed troops how to access tunnels leading to the factory. So far, the Kremlin has denied troops are storming the plant, but some believe Moscow could use next Monday or Victory Day to declare triumph over Mariupol.
There are Russian leaders in the city of Mariupol preparing for some kind of announcement and celebration there, as well as in Moscow.
Meanwhile, there are new questions about intelligence the U.S. is providing Ukraine. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby says the U.S. did not provide the specific intelligence that led to Ukraine sinking Russia's flagship vessel in the Black Sea.
Ukraine combines information that we and other partners provide with the intelligence that they themselves are gathering on the battlefield.
This weekend, First Lady Jill Biden travels to Romania and Slovakia to visit with Ukrainian families displaced by the fighting. In Kyiv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
First Lady Jill Biden is in Romania, and among her missions, serving meals to members of the U.S. military. Mrs. Biden took her place in the buffet line at the airbase, and soon dinner was served. The American forces serving at the base are part of rotational deployments supporting Romania, a NATO ally. Also on the First Lady's agenda will be a trip to the Slovakia border with Ukraine on Mother's Day. This is the First Lady's second solo international trip. Her first was last summer when she visited the Tokyo Olympics. We'll have your weekend forecast next. Plus, Jamie Holmes will join us with more news. Stay with us.
Here's your local stock market update from Big Fox. Now, your Twin Tiers forecast from Big Fox.
Hi everyone, welcome. I'm meteorologist Sam Ryan. Latest rainfall recorded Friday here, only 0.07 of an inch, quite a bit more though, just on our doorstep to the south. Kind of depends exactly where you're at. Here's a look over the last 5 days. Temperatures running well below the average, socked in with some of those clouds and some of those light drips of rain. We'll continue to see some of the potential, at least a chance of it, beginning to taper off though as we get close to midnight. But this kind of look at your overnight rundown here, chance at a few scattered drips. Temperatures dropping 45, waking up at 6 a.m. Kind of a cool start out there, some of those clouds. Now those showers, for the most part, we'll be wrapping things up here around 6 a.m. I think. Slow moving system though, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly the time, but we're looking at temperatures in those mid 40s to kick things off Saturday. So as we go through the rest of the day though, those showers move on out. We still have a lot of high and mid-level clouds. So to get any of the rain, it's kind of difficult. A lot of it dries out kind of Virga style as it moves through the atmosphere, but we may catch a couple drips out there if you happen to be driving around. Temperatures still struggling though in the low 50s, winds out of the northeast, and then those high clouds slowly begin to continue to move on out throughout the day here Saturday. Again, we'll be in those lower 50s and we get back into widespread sunshine just in time to do something for mom or the wife or whatever you got. Significant other looking at getting out there, maybe take them out for dinner. I don't know. I'm more about this. Our showers exit. Oh, I'm showing my color here. All right, showers exit. Clouds linger. High level clouds Saturday, and then sunny for Mother's Day. There, warming up. I got to dig myself out of this hole I put myself in. All right, we're doing some showers down to the south here, and here we are Saturday, 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Again, things kind of start to clear on out. We get back into that sunshine for Sunday. Then things really start to warm up. We're talking very warm temperatures. So its upper level low is going to park itself right off the coast there in the Atlantic and kind of meander. It's stuck. It's a blocking pattern. But here's a look at high Sunday. We're in the lower 60s. That's improvement. It'll feel rather nice out there. And then above average temperatures begin to move in. So see the overnight lows as well. Kind of chilly here Sunday night into Monday. Still kind of hanging out in those 30s. But this ridge builds over the top of that cutoff low, which moves over the Atlantic. And get a load of this. An early season heat wave starts to grip the entire eastern half, really, of the United States. It's that bubble of heat that's been building from Mexico up through the Four Corners. It just comes screaming in here. So we're looking at 74 Tuesday, 78 Wednesday, and it's a fairly dry pattern as well. 81 on Thursday.
The pandemic taught us many lessons on how we can improve healthcare, education, our family lives, and more. But as Ashley Stromier reports, scientists say COVID-19 lockdowns have even taught us how we can be better protected against the environment from the effects of climate change.
It's hard to imagine the positives when looking back at 2020's COVID-19 lockdowns, but environmental data shows they resulted in massive improvements to global air quality and greenhouse gas emission levels. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the world saw a roughly 7% decrease in toxic emissions during the first year of the pandemic, as lockdowns kept many people at home and off the roadways. In New York City, for example, researchers say they saw about a 20% drop in pollution after the traffic disappeared, but that number should have been much higher.
There are so many cars here. We should have seen 80% change in all that air quality, and we did not.
Although cars play a role in driving up methane and carbon emissions, they're starting to take a back seat to the effects factories, offices, and residences have on the environment.
We're seeing pollution from home heating, from water heaters, from the power plants.
And as the world continues returning to the workplace and achieving pre-pandemic normalcy, researchers say we're reversing the climate progress we've made during lockdowns. And NOAA recently reported 2021 saw the largest increase in global methane gas emissions since 1983. Scientists are now trying to understand the potential reasons behind last year's record rise in methane gas, citing the need to improve how we manage large methane producers like landfills, wastewater, and dairy farms. Ashley Stromier, Fox News.
Robocalls are at an all-time high. Organizations tracking them say the pandemic gave us a small break, but as we started getting back to business, so did the robocallers. Joy Addison has more on how we should be screening these calls.
We've seen a major increase in robocalls over the last few months, and some of these robocallers are running serious scams. The Better Business Bureau says these calls can be tricky because the majority of them are allegedly coming from Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and some debt collectors.
There was a time when I would get 20 to 30 in a 24-hour period.
Lee Williams deals with what he feels is an endless amount of robocalls. He says he once depended on his phone provider to fix the issue.
You'll get a call and it will say spam likely. But I found that probably a bit over 50% of those calls that were identified as scammers were actually calls that you needed to receive. You know, family members that may not have been on your contact list or your doctor's office.
He says he downloaded an app to help, but he still gets robocalls daily. According to UMail's nationwide robocall tracker, there was an increase of over 600 million calls from February to March.
When everybody was on lockdown and everybody was isolated, there was actually a dip in the amount of robocalls. Then as things started to open up a little bit, that number went back up.
The Better Business Bureau tracks scams like those linked to robocalls. It says these scams can cost consumers thousands.
If you give away your personal identifiable information, they can use that data to open up credit cards, open up cell phones, or maybe even rent an apartment.
It recommends you either use apps that block robocalls or simply not answer.
If you receive a phone number and they're claiming that perhaps your personal identifiable information is at risk, or it's an organization you never heard about, yeah, you can go ahead and report it to bbb.org/scam tracker.
The Better Business Bureau says calls from legitimate businesses, charitable organizations, and campaign calls are allowed. The FCC recently announced that it may soon require providers to submit a robocall mitigation plan, detailing how they plan to further block and screen robocalls. In Houston, Joy Addison, Fox News.
Seniors living on the streets. Homeless agencies across the nation say it's an alarming new trend because of rising rents and inflation. Rebecca Castor reports from New Orleans, one city that is seeing this.
Homeless advocates across the U.S. are calling this a crisis. One of the agencies we spoke to here tells us that just about 10 months ago, it was rare for them to see an elderly person come through their doors asking for help. But now they're seeing at least one senior a day who's found themselves on the streets for the first time.
It's hard because you're not knowing where your next meal is coming from, or where your next shower is coming from.
55-year-old Daryl Gibson has been on the streets in New Orleans for 3 weeks now. He has liver disease and recently lost his mother.
This has been the first time I have been on the streets without no family.
He's now one of tens of thousands of American seniors without a permanent home, and researchers predict the crisis will get worse. A 2019 study by the University of Pennsylvania estimates the number of elderly people experiencing homelessness will nearly triple by 2030, reaching over 100,000.
It's a lot of horror, especially during the night times because it gets colder, and the older people, your body temperature is not the same as it used to be. Then you got to sleep on concrete, and that's hard.
It's an alarming new trend that we're seeing. They're really upset when they come here because they have their choices are very few.
Phyllis Lofton is a crisis coordinator at Travelers Aid Society, a homeless outreach and counseling center in New Orleans. She says many seniors were pushed out of their homes after Hurricane Ida when landlords did repairs and then raised the rent.
And they have such little amount of money, it just kind of leaves them in a quandary.
And she's worried about their safety as crime surges here.
Now there are homeless gangs that are attacking other homeless people.
And the younger ones, they don't care about anyone but self. All they want is to get high, to rob, to kill.
But even though he's fallen on hard times, Daryl is still hopeful.
I believe in God. And I believe He's going to make a way for me.
Travelers Aid Society tells us they were in the process of hiring more employees to help with the city's growing homeless population. In New Orleans, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
Elon Musk's Twitter takeover bid faces a roadblock. Boeing is on the move, and why Peloton is looking for investors. CJ Papa has these stories and more in today's Business Briefs.
The Federal Trade Commission is reviewing Elon Musk's Twitter buyout for potential antitrust concerns. The agency will reportedly decide next month whether to do an in-depth antitrust probe of the deal, a move that could delay its closing for months. But experts say there is little chance the deal will be blocked since Musk's other companies, Tesla and Starlink, are not social media platforms. Boeing plans to move its global headquarters from Chicago to Arlington, Virginia, where it plans to build a research and technology hub to focus on cybersecurity, autonomous operations, and systems engineering. The move would bring Boeing executives closer to federal decision makers in D.C., as it faces regulatory scrutiny over its 737 jets and 787 Dreamliners. Inflation impacting businesses across the country, forcing many to raise prices as the cost of gas and supplies increase. The price of sewing machines, fabric, and supplies rising 1.7% in March year over year, and the cost of women's apparel rising 6.5% in March. Finally, Peloton says it's looking to sell a minority stake in its business to help its turnaround. Peloton was popular with homebound customers exercising at home earlier in the pandemic. Its business has been sagging as lockdowns eased and people returned to gyms. For more stories, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm CJ Papa.
I want to leave you with a smile. This will probably be one of the cutest T-ball games you'll see this year. A Michigan mom captured the moment when her daughter, 3-year-old Lila Denby, goes up to bat and hits the ball. It wasn't a game-winning hit, so the toddler wanted a do-over and went after the ball instead of heading to first base. The little girl's dad, who's also the coach, saw it, picked her up, and got her back on the right track. The good news is she made it where she needed to go with a little extra help from Dad. That does it for us. I'm Jamie Holmes. Thanks so much for watching.